Parliament debates OK Tedi closure and concerns raised on Tolukuma and Morobe Mines. Opening of New Britain Highway a concern for police.
And we need to start uprooting those illegal settlements.
And more calls for Australian guards to answer charges in PNG.
This is National EMTV News with Tokana Hasavi.
Good evening and welcome to Wednesday's news. It's good to have your company. Teleforming MP Solan Mirisim has challenged the ONeill government to send an investigation team to the OK Tedi mine to investigate the laying off of employees and contractors expected to begin in Tabubil. Mr. Mirisim says the temporary shutdown of OK Tedi would affect the 2016 government's budget, including the Western Provincial Government budget, and wants the government to come clean on its plans to assist the mine to export its gold and copper. The MP directed this question to the Prime Minister in Parliament this morning.
Mr. Mirisim told Parliament today that the layoff exercise is an injustice to the hundreds of employees and contractors of ONeill who will be affected by the temporary shutdown. He said the ONeill board had failed to inform its employees and contractors on the repatriation exercise, and as a result, the education of those students whose parents will be laid off in Tabubil or Kinga will be affected.
In my view, as a leader from that part of the world, see this as an injustice, inhuman, and insult to our people over there.
In response to Mirisim's challenge, Prime Minister Peter ONeill told Parliament that his government was briefed by Octi Limited's board chairman last week on the current challenges the mine is facing. Mr. ONeill said the layoff is part of a cost-cutting measure that the mine will be undertaking, and the shutdown is only temporary.
So, Mr. Speaker, it is a temporary shutdown, and they are going to put the mine into care and maintenance. So while this dry spell is continuing, Mr. Speaker, they will try and repair some of the assets and machinery that needs much of the repair that has been outstanding for quite some time.
In an exclusive interview with EMTV News yesterday, Prime Minister Peter ONeill said the expenditure of the mine will be controlled and there will be delays in the payments of the mine's non-priority areas. ONeill said the decrease in water levels on the Fly River and the drop in commodity prices on world market are two contributing factors to this temporary shutdown.
So this is affecting government revenue. But to mitigate that, what we are doing is basically lifting up our control on the expenditure, making sure that we don't overspend above the budget that was approved by Parliament.
However, all hope is not lost. In Parliament today, the Prime Minister confidently said once the mine picks up on its normal operations, the mine will bring back the employees that it needs.
But, Mr. Speaker, both the Chairman and the Managing Director have stressed to me the last thing they want to do is lay off Papua New Guineans. That's the last thing they want to do.
Tekla Gunga, National EMTV News.
Well, as OK Tedi Mining Limited continues with plans to temporarily shut down operations, it's business as usual for now in Kinga Town, where ONeill's port is located. The port is located on the Fly River and is one of the main economic activity for Kinga. Town residents say they noticed a drop in the level of the Fly about a month ago. EMTV's Sarah Alpong has this report from Kinga.
As we flew into Kinga Town this morning, we noticed large amounts of water on the wetlands near the township. A trip to the main wharf shows that water levels are at this mark. While there are no ships berthed at the wharf, residents and vendors living and conducting business near the main wharf say there were a couple of ships that docked in last week and offloaded some cargoes.
Fly Challenger, Fly Prosperity, Fly Resilience. They all came and they all left.
Lucy has lived on the banks of the river for most of her life. While she has worked in the public sector, her main economic activity for the last 3 years has been the sale of betel nut at the Kinga waterfront. She says there was a significant drop in water levels a while back.
It was almost similar to that, but Not really. It was the last time that it dropped was not that real to that 97. 97, yes, it was really dropped right down. But to the recent past month ago, not that really. I would say that.
The wharf is shared by ONeill and Port Services. ONeill conducts its own stevedoring services, while Port Services caters to Kinga Town. As news of the impending temporary closure of ONeill operations flow around this town, it raises some questions for residents of Kinga. ONeill maintains a huge presence in Kinga Town. Its employee compound is situated right in the heart of this town. In terms of services, ONeill is the only provider of electricity and water in Kinga. With the impending temporary closure, the impact Kinga will feel in terms of economic activities and services remains to be seen. Sarah Aupong, National EMTV News, Kinga.
A majority of discussions in Parliament today were focused on the mining sector. Following the situation at OK Tedi, Bulol MP Sam Basil directed a series of questions to the Prime Minister on the temporary closure of Tolukuma and Morobe Mines. He says the closure of the mines have affected many people and asked the government to give Parliament an update on their futures.
It's a new question.
The series of questions on the two gold mines were initially directed to the Mining Minister Byron Chen, but were answered by Prime Minister Peter ONeill. In his supplementary questions, the Bulolo MP was concerned about the lives of people who are direct beneficiaries of the mines. Basil said the two mines have been closed for a while and asked the government to inform the public about its operational status.
They asked me if I could ask you the question on the floor to give some brief about the reopening of the Tolukuma mine, because many lives were affected, those that depend on the existence of the mine.
In response, Prime Minister Peter ONeill said both the mines are important government assets and there is continuous dialogues between its government and the board of Tolukuma Mine. Mr. ONeill said Tolukuma Mine developer Petromin had faced financial constraints where it lost over 100 million kina from operational costs, and that has affected the operations of the mine.
And Petromin, as a company, cannot afford to maintain that kind of exposure. Continue to operate a mine that is losing. So I have given instructions to Petromin that they sell down their interest or dispose of the mine.
The Prime Minister also announced that Petromin will be concluding discussions with a new mine developer in the coming weeks.
They will come to an arrangement where the new investor is going to come and invest in that mine, and we are trying to encourage them to operate that mine and the tenements around that Tolukuma area.
However, at the moment, Petromin is conducting care and maintenance work on some of the mining facilities at Tolukuma. Taklagunga, National EMTV News.
Meanwhile, opposition leader Don Pollier is disappointed about the temporary measures on OK Tedi mine. He said in light of the government's revenue constraints, the downturn in mineral prices should not become an excuse. He also said revenue cuts in the budget and major government policies like healthcare and free education will be affected. In the meantime, Mr. Pollier says the government should adhere to all the industrial processes to ensure the employees are fully compensated. Police conscious of increased criminal activities, Prime Minister wants report on Mandres oil palm and more calls for Australian guards to face PNG laws for suspected rape in Manus. We'll give you all the details coming up after this break. Good to have you back with National EMTV News. East New Britain Police are expecting an increase in criminal activities following the opening of New Britain Highway in the coming months. Provincial Police Commander Anthony Wagambi Jr. says the new highway will see the influx of people into the province. He says illegal settlements are expected to increase significantly and will fuel the upsurge of crime. MTV's Edwin Fidelis has this story from Kokopo.
While the town of Kokopo is slowly transforming into a growing city, the police are becoming more concerned with the level of organized crime committed. New developments mean more challenges for the police. First, the New Britain Highway that will link East and West New Britain is expected to drive in more people into the province than before, and more people coming means more land will be needed to cater for this large influx. The East New Britain Police Boss Superintendent Anthony Wagambi Jr. has already begun discussions with the provincial government over land issues.
I have asked the provincial administration to seriously look into that, and we need to start uprooting those illegal settlements and start moving people out of the province. We may anticipate a lot of problems when the New Britain Highway opens up, where we link up West Britain and East Britain. So we need to clamp down on illegal settlements immediately now.
The recent string of armed robberies in Kokopo and Rabaul in the last 2 weeks has prompted the head of East New Britain Police to speak out, and the blame has been leveled against the growing number of illegal settlements on the fringes of Kokopo town over the last 2 years.
With the influx of people coming in, the number of unemployed people within the community. Because they're unemployed, they tend to turn to crime to earn a living.
While Kokopo town gears up to meet its economic expectation as the tourism hub, the police want to make sure that the city won't follow the same path as Lae and Port Moresby, where illegal settlements and crime is a daily concern. Edwin Fidelis, National EMTV News, Kokopo.
The oil palm issue in the Mandres area of East New Britain Province has attracted top government's attention. Prime Minister Peter ONeill said yesterday he will instruct the Agriculture Minister to file a report on the issue. Since January this year, more than 100 hectares of cocoa trees were destroyed by an Asian oil palm developer to plant oil palm without consultation from the government.
Questions on the oil palm development issue in the Gazelle district of East New Britain was put to the Prime Minister in this interview yesterday.
I am not aware of this.
But Mr. ONeill says he wasn't informed of the current state of the oil palm project in the Mandres area that has resulted to the destruction of several thousands of cocoa trees by an Asian oil palm developer.
I will talk to our ministers, especially the Agriculture Minister, to find out what really project is going on in this particular area in the Gazelle district.
The Prime Minister's comments come 7 months after a massive work on oil palm development began early this year. A division had emerged between those who want cocoa and those who want oil palm as their main cash crop. What has angered the cocoa farmers was a lack of consultation between the landowners, the oil palm developers and the provincial government. The issue is now before the court, but the cocoa farmers say even if they win the court battle, they won't be able to bring back their cocoa trees that have already been destroyed. In 2014, the landowners here began diversifying their cocoa operations to include oil palm farming. So they invited a locally based Asian oil palm developer, Jan New Guinea, to clear the land and plant oil palm in the area. Those who resisted oil palm were evicted and their cocoa blocks, food gardens and homes were demolished.
Any developer who goes into our communities to develop either agriculture or any resource, do business, they must respect the wishes of our people. Because our people have lived in this land for thousands of years. That is their birthright.
More than 12 families have been evicted from their home and their properties destroyed since January this year. The cocoa farmers have been suppressed to speak openly as they are outnumbered by their rival faction who prefers oil palm to cocoa. Edwin Fidelis, National EMTV News, Kokopo.
A landowner outside Port Moresby has no idea how his land was taken over by an agricultural company. The company, identified as New Guinea Oil Palm Limited, obtained a formal land title, but the landowner says he was never consulted. The company has already commenced work between Duran Farm and Boteka Village, preparing to turn that land into an oil palm plantation.
Work on that land area near Boteka Village has already commenced. However, the landowner, Yamahomoka, is an unhappy man. He approached a leader of the company, New Guinea Oil Palm Limited, on site, but was surprised that the company has a formal land title. A copy of the title shows that the 341 hectares of land on Posen 1489 was a former agricultural land leased to Duran Farm for a period of 99 years. However, the 99-year period has lapsed. The title was then transferred to a Fresh Food Marketing Corporation Limited, and on 25th of June 1991, the title was given to New Guinea Oil Palm Limited. 3 months ago, the area was fenced and the current title holder is preparing the site for planting oil palm. The landowner claims that it's customary land and is appealing for an investigation. In Parliament yesterday, Lands Minister Benny Allen clarified that any land area leased under the 99-year contract will not be given back to landowners after the contract expires. Instead, it will remain as state land.
If the 99-year lease expires, it still remains state land, and it's renewed to the lessee for the next 99-year lease.
But this idea is still not acceptable by landowners. For Yama, he says the land now belongs to him. He maintains that as the rightful landowner of the land, he has to be consulted before any further developments happen on his land. Quinten Alom, National EMTV News.
Manus MP Ronnie Knight is calling on the Australian government to repatriate the 3 Wilson security officers suspected of raping a local female employee at the Manus Asylum Seekers Centre. Mr. Knight says if the 3 suspects deny the charges, then they must explain to authorities in PNG. Prime Minister Peter ONeill also made similar calls to allow for investigations to go ahead.
The Manus MP condemned the actions by the Wilson security officers and the process authorities took by sending the suspects back to Australia. Mr. Knight says it's a criminal matter and must be dealt with on PNG soil.
The way Transfield has handled this thing is deplorable. Now, we demand him, Australian High Commission, we demand him all border protection from Australia and immigration. Bring those 3 people back and let the police deal with them.
Knight said the whole setup of the Manus Regional Processing Centre is no benefit to the local people as conditions of the province remain in bad state.
The issues that are standing at Lombrum, which I've Lorangau and Lombrum and Los Negros, which I've been putting in Parliament, have been totally ignored by those people responsible. And I feel that our people are becoming scapegoats for these things. None of us in Papua New Guinea will be able to get away with it if we were in Australia. I believe this.
He says the people of Manus are suffering and nothing is there to show for. Meanwhile, President of the Catholic Professionals Society of PNG, Paul Heriknen, called for the closure of the Asylum Centre.
The current government should also realize that this scheme, this deal, is not worth it. And the current government must take decisive action and close the Manus Detention Centre.
Heriknen says Australia cannot bulldoze decisions when there has been a crime committed in the country.
It's just not fair to Papua New Guinea to be made to break its own constitution and laws, and for them to come and abuse our citizens.
Yesterday, Prime Minister Peter ONeill called for the return of the 3 Australian personnel to face PNG prosecution.
Who sent this particular person out of the country? Why was he not charged? They must respect the sovereignty of this country. They must respect our laws. They must respect our people.
The Australian government is yet to make a formal statement on the matter. Jack Lapower Jr., National EMTV News.
Meanwhile, speaking as a lawyer, Paul Heriknen says it will set a bad precedent if the 3 Wilson security officers do not face PNG prosecution. Heriknen says drastic measures must also be taken to review contracts of firms working at the asylum centre. He called on the PNG government not to turn a blind eye on the matter.
They can't simply run a business here and then do things that will undermine PNG law and PNG sovereignty. So they are to be also questioned on how it happened, why it happened, and be dealt with.
Prime Minister Peter ONeill has officially opened another gateway to the country, the Motueka Port just outside Port Moresby. The opening of the Motueka Port is the first step towards the relocation of PNG Ports Corporation. The move to Motueka will take up to 20 months to ensure minimum disruption to port operations. The area where PNG Port is located at CBD will be freed up for the ring road and other developments. And now we check out the finance news. The Kina closed unchanged at $0.3615 in the interbank market. At Bank South Pacific, our Kina was trading at $0.3540 $0.4795 Australian dollars, $0.3162 euro, and 43.3 Japanese yen. Looking at commodity prices at New York close, gold and copper closed the day lower, while coffee and cocoa closed higher. Palm oil and copper closed higher as well, while crude oil closed the day lower. And finally, on the stock market, the Dow Jones closed at 190 points lower, the ASX closed at 8 points higher, and the All Ordinaries closed at 5 points higher as well. Senior Defence Force official blames inadequate training for bad behaviour of soldiers. We'll bring you that story and more coming up on National EMTV News. Thanks for your company and welcome back to the news. A senior member of the Papua New Guinea Defence Force has blamed the ongoing disciplinary problems within the force's rank and file on inadequate training. He says most of the disciplinary problems are caused by new soldiers undergoing just 3 months of military training. This time frame is not enough to turn them into professional soldiers.
The recent incident involving soldiers and students has again shed light on the training of new recruits. Most of the new recruits are not fully indoctrinated with the values of the military to transform their civilian mindsets. The soldier who wants to remain anonymous described these new recruits as half-baked soldiers. Previously, soldiers underwent 6 months of military training, but that has been trimmed down to 3 months. This is to meet the national government's target of 5,000 men by 2017. In doing so, the PNGDF has compromised the training of the new recruits. The soldier says such is a deadly recipe and the PNGDF must return to the drawing board to correct this mistake. If this is not resolved, ill discipline will continue to plague the Papua New Guinea Defence Force. Though PNGDF maintains it provides adequate training for its soldiers, it does not show in the conduct of its men. If it does, students like Jeremiah Yinu would not have had to suffer at their hands. Mickey Cavera, National EMTV News.
Non-government organisation Voice of Melanesia is calling for economic ownership of resources. They say foreigners are exhausting PNG's resources while ordinary people are suffering every day. Yesterday, the group staged a rally outside the Parliament's House, raising their voice for independent economic ownership.
Armed with the placards, the NGO group Voice of Melanesia staged their concerns for 100% ownership of resources all around Papua New Guinea. They say PNG may have tons of deposits in copper, gold, gas and oil, but if foreigners are allowed to put their hands all over these resources, PNG will be late in realizing all this.
Nothing awesome! Papua New Guinea, liquid country, powerful country, pull up the resource. Background blow me blah think me blah alright. But underneath this blah, me blah true, me blah poor.
Manik said the 7.8 million people of PNG are suffering economically, while foreigners are making billions using PNG resources. He called on the government to take this seriously.
People are now asking Prime Minister must declare him ownership because 111 members got petition belong. People are giving penis inside the Parliament House.
The group also want all MPs to consider the petition and think of the people.
We need to make sure we take control of these resources. We take control of our economy. And when we have control of our economy, we will be able to deliver goods and services effectively to our people in rural areas.
The NGO group consists of members from the 22 provinces around the country.
We are a nation, and we are concerned about our people, how we will develop, and to make sure that everyone should benefit from the development taking place.
Jack Lapawe, Junior, National EMTV News.
The tourism sector in Jiwaka is set to expand in the next 2 years with improved infrastructure and new hotels. The owner of Jiwaka Mission Resort, Andrew Tuntz, says the province has rich history entwined with culture, and the work carried out by early missionaries has potential growth in the tourism industry. His comments come amidst improved government infrastructures and increased police and defence force presence in the area.
Andrew Tuntz partnered with the Evangelical Lutheran Church and started the Jiwaka Mission Resort. His decision to do so opens a window of opportunity for a new province that is still growing an economy that is in its infancy.
Gave okay for us to work in partnership, so we are sharing our vision with the church, and the guys are happy and we are happy as well, and a bit of cash flow for the local economy.
The Jiwaka Mission Resort is new and is still a work in progress, but the resort's existence gives light to possibilities in the sustainable Jiwaka tourism sector. The province doesn't have the mines, but it has land fertile to supply fresh livestock and garden produce to any tourist-filled restaurant. The culture is also colorful. Sharing a border with the Chimbu province, there is a blend of tradition against a backdrop of government-improved roads and more police, including defense force presence, and the right attitude from the people. Jiwaka tourism is set to rise.
One of the hindrances to the Jiwaka tourism industry, like many other places around Papua New Guinea, is the law and order problem. Now, that law and order problem is being solved with more police and PNGDF personnel being placed into the area. The sector has real potential for growth. It can boost a growing economy. The amount of visitors coming into Jiwaka can also contribute to the amount of people going into businesses within the tourism sector. Bethany Harriman, National EMTV News.
Public Enterprise Minister Ben Micah announced in Parliament today that over 40 million kina was used to save PNG Power Limited from going out of business. His announcement follows a series of questions by members of Ngoram and Talasia on the rural electrification programs in their electorates. Both members said millions of kina were deposited into their provincial governments for the installation of electricity in their districts, but to date, the districts still lack power supply.
The tussle over the funds for rural electrification program dates back to the Somare government. 10 million kina was given to the Ngoram district to pull power lines from Wewak into Ngoram. However, Ngoram MP says that has not eventuated. He told Parliament this morning that the money initially given for the program was taken from the East Sepik Provincial Treasury, leaving the project incomplete.
Up until now, currently, Ngoram, power in reaching Ngoram, but the 10 million kina was already being given.
The same concern was raised by Talasia MP Francis Marus in a supplementary question to the State Minister Ben Micah. Mr. Marus said over 3 million kina was invested by the Somare government for PNG Power to bring electricity into Hoskins, but that has also not eventuated. Both members have asked Minister Micah to give a report on where the funds may have been used and if the rural electrification program could still be conducted.
5 years now, na mi wet na all working half to sol na half all no complete met so ina minister I talk a lot people me.
Mr. Michael, before answering the questions, tried to explain the challenges the government went through in trying to save PNG Power from going out of business, but was interrupted by Grand Chief Sir Michael Somare to not beat around the bush and answer the questions accordingly.
Question is, we had the money put in our fund in Wewak accounts. We want to know how did the money was spoiled around and brought back to here to give it to a certain contractor who is a relative of a man in charge of power stations in Papua New Guinea.
Minister Micah then admitted that some of the funds that were supposed to be used for the electrification program were used to save PNG Power, and at the moment there is no money left to continue the program.
So we cannot really come up with an accurate account or report on exactly what PNG Power spent long display money where all member put him. Now all member yet, all previous members or even all members, only working on them all private contractors. It is taking time for us, but I want to assure all honorable members, Mr. Speaker, that I will provide a report to each of you.
Tekla Gunga, National EMTV News.
A magnitude 7.2 earthquake hit Indonesia's Papua region on Monday, the U.S. Geological Survey revealed. The quake struck at 6:41 a.m., almost 250 kilometers west of the provincial capital Jayapura. According to the Asia Vision Network, a teenage boy in Memramo was killed after falling into the river while he was fishing. But life went back to normal quickly as there were no immediate aftershocks in the area. Both Indonesian authorities and the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center said there was no threat of any tsunami waves from the quake, which occurred beneath a jungle. Indonesia and Papua New Guinea sits on the Pacific Ring of Fire, where tectonic plates collide, causing frequent seismic and volcanic activity. Well, Trucha Sports is coming up next, and Cricket PNG will bring you news on them, and our gold-winning touch teams look forward to more international fixtures. Stay with us.
Trucha Sports.
Welcome to Trucha Sports. Well, after securing medals at the recent Pacific Games, Cricket PNG is now looking to ramp up preparations for further international exposure. PNG picked up silver for both the men's and women's teams, and also the Barramundis came close to securing a spot in the ICC T20 World Cup. Cricket PNG believes that this is only the tip of the iceberg for the code in the country.
Strong performances had opened PNG's campaign in the Pacific Games. Wins by the Lewas early on had looked to cement PNG's claim to being the best in the Pacific. Before a shock 8-run loss to Samoa ended their hopes. Likewise, the PNG A side. In devastating form against New Caledonia, it was Vanuatu who would ultimately prove to be PNG's dark horse. The Melanesian side outclassing the home team with a hat-trick of victories. Former Barramundi skipper Christopher Amini, however, had stated from the outset that this side was a mixture of former internationals with a blend of youth looking to make their full debuts. And the performances by both sides had boded well for the future of PNG cricket. The Barramundis themselves had had mixed fortunes. A win and a loss to the Netherlands had offered consolation alongside their up-and-down start against the Worcestershire side in England. Before stunners against Kenya and Ireland. Internationally, the team is becoming recognized. And on the home turf, development programs are already looking at targeted expansion to bring the sport to outlying provinces, with plans for a modern facility designed to accommodate visiting teams and provide PNG with a grander home as befitting. Jeremy Mogi, National EMTV Sports.
Paradise Tailoring will continue to support PNG touch rugby teams this year. Despite their gold-winning performances at the recent Pacific Games, funding remains an issue for the National Touch Federation. But with support from Paradise Tailoring, the Federation can now set mid-term goals to support teams on respective international campaigns.
Vice-captain of PNG's women's touch rugby team, Vavine Yore, was among PNG's National Touch Federation executives that attended the sponsorship presentation by Paradise Tailoring today. Locally owned tailoring company Paradise Tailoring had jumped on board to support PNG Touch in the World Cup campaign in April.
When this opportunity that came about in sponsoring the uniform, and I think the first thing that TFPNG thought was this could be the company that we could be working, having a long-term relationship towards that. We'll be putting something together formally, and we could get to the discussion stage and get that understanding signed, so that your company will also benefit through touch for PNG, so as well as touch for PNG will benefit through the supply of uniforms that are unique to our our culture.
The sponsorship of uniforms by Paradise Tailoring is a timely boost to the code. Both the PNG men's and women's team bagged gold and settled for silver in the mixed open division at the Pacific Games.
Especially for the rugby touch thing, it's a world event. You guys have done us proud. There's other companies here, but they are scared to put in money into such activities, such sporting organizations. They find it hard. But because we're used to sponsoring sports, we're into sports.
Among the strategic plans set by the National Touch Federation included forging partnerships to secure funding and support from business entities in the country.
We cannot do this all alone. All this can be achieved through a good partnership arrangement, all working together to achieve this goal. Touch Football PNG, we don't claim the credits for ourselves. We give the credit to everyone that who have worked with us.
And have set their sights in specializing in sports apparels for sports clubs in the country. Scholar Sengi, National, EMTV Sports.
Well, Trucha Sports continues with weightlifting coming up after this break. Stay tuned for that and more.
Trucha Sports.
Good to have you back with Trucha Sports. Well, Trucha Industries honoured its words today, rewarding PNG Golden weightlifters with a total of 65,000 kina as part of the company's incentive following the Pacific Games. The PNG weightlifting team won a total of 13 gold medals, with young Thelma Toa bagging 3.
On the eve of the Pacific Games, Trucha announced that they would reward PNG weightlifters with 5,000 kina for every gold medal won during the Games. And today, Trucha Industries honored their commitment and presented a check of 65,000 kina to the PNG Weightlifting Federation.
On behalf of my executive, it's a big thank you to Trucha on behalf of the gold medalists. The other medalists will be duly recognized and rewarded for their efforts by the government, including the ones that participated in the Pacific Games. So, but today is all about Trucha, and thanks very much, Andrew. Over to you.
13 gold medals in weightlifting, that is just absolutely outstanding. And it just is a great pleasure for us to continue to support weightlifting and to provide the 5,000 kina per gold medal today. So weightlifting doesn't stop at the Pacific Games. There's the Commonwealth titles later on in the year and the world titles. So we hope that this money goes to help support the athletes and the families to get Team PNG, Team Weightlifting PNG to these world events.
Athletes that were at the presentation today were Guba Hale, Sandra Ako, Stephen Curry and Dekatoa. The weightlifters were grateful for Trucha's support of Weightlifting PNG.
I'd like to say thank you Trucha Industries for the support and also the government. Without you, this wouldn't be happening, so thank you.
Among the athletes who received the reward from Trucha were the weightlifters currently in New Caledonia, whose family members were on hand to receive on their behalf. Trucha Industries has been a major supporter of the PNG Weightlifting Federation since the year 2000 and has also supported the code financially and through the provision of merchandise and rice. Dion Kombang, National, EMTV Sports.
Well, Trucha Sports ends on that note. The weather details when we come back. Stay tuned for that.
Trucha Sports.
Taking a quick look at the weather forecast for tonight and tomorrow in southern region, relatively fine weather expected in all centres. In Momase, partly cloudy expected in Vanimore. In the New Guinea Islands, partly cloudy with chances of some showers expected in Kokopo and Kimbe. And lastly, in the Highlands region, all centres mostly fine, then morning fog. Now, before we go, in news just in, OK Tedi Mining Limited is employing stringent cost-cutting measures to ensure that they remain viable. Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer Peter Graham and Deputy CEO Ms. Jawara spoke to EMTV News today about some of the measures that they are taking.
Peter Graham says during this financially trying time for the company, a lot of hard decisions will have to be made. Unfortunately, that means cutting back on labor costs, which represent 20% of OTML expenses.
Two challenges today. One is the dry weather, but there's a second one, which is just very low prices for our products, copper and gold. I mean, in the course of the last 5 years, the price has fallen by more than 30%. Copper's down 35% and gold is down 30%. So as our revenues decline, it pinches us in terms of our costs. If they stay the same, we end up with being in difficulties. So we're obliged to see how we can reduce our costs. And we're working all the avenues to reduce the costs. And one of those avenues, unfortunately, is labour cost. So that's caused us to have to go back and look at our staffing models, the number of workers we have in the workforce. And sadly, we're having to reduce the workforce in order to just build that buffer between revenues and costs.
In an internal memo obtained by EMTV dated 24th of July, Graham says one of the cost-cutting measures will be no 2015 salary review or bonus payment for the employees.
So it's a combination of factors that come together that cause some real stress on the business at this point in time. And then you superimpose the dry weather on top of that and our inability to get paid for our concentrate. And we really start to feel the pressure. So.
As the Deputy CEO responsible for employee and external relations, Mushewera said they had a meeting this morning with landowners to discuss the plans in place for education and health services.
We appreciate that the primary school and the Tabubil High School are government schools, and obviously the decision to shut those schools will have to come from the education department. Our concern is with our employees and the children, and obviously they need to, I guess, reduce the number of people in town when we do hit a dry weather situation, and when we need to extend the food stocks in Tabubil. So the less people in Tabubil, the longer we can have the stocks remaining. So OK Tedi's position is to look at reducing our employees, flying them off-site. We have made a consideration for grade 10s and 12 students, and families, the working parent of the students will remain on site with the children to allow them to complete the exams come October. So that's the consideration on the education side.
While the weather has improved over the last couple of days, Graham says they do not know how long this will last. He says they will continue with the plans that they have in place and hope that it will put them in a good financial position. Sarah Aupong, National EMTV News, Tabubil.
Well, that's how we wrap up the news this Wednesday. From the entire news crew, I'm Tokana Hasavi Jr. Thanks for your company. You take care and stay safe. Good night.